In the dark silence of deep space far beyond the known star lanes, a fleet of alien warships drifted out of hyperspace. Their hulls gleamed in cold light, covered in glowing symbols of the Zorath Dominion, a galactic empire that had crushed and conquered countless worlds. They came in hundreds, their ships shaped like knives cutting through the stars, each one humming with power and pride. To the Zorath, this was routine. Another unknown sector, another easy victory, another mark of their expanding empire. The star charts labeled this new region as unclaimed space, but ancient data fragments mentioned a name, Terran sector. The aliens studied the data and laughed. It spoke of a species called humans, once active but now silent for centuries. To them, this meant one thing. The Terrans were either extinct or far too weak to matter. Their homeworld, Earth, had long been abandoned in the records of the galactic archives. So the Zorath commanders decided this would be an effortless expansion. When their first patrol ships entered the sector, there was no resistance. No warning beacons, no automated defenses, just silence. Planet after planet appeared barren or lifeless. Some had old wrecks orbiting them, relics of a forgotten age. The Zorath soldiers mocked them, calling the Terran systems a graveyard of the past. Yet there was something strange about the silence. The deeper they went, the more they felt watched. Their sensors picked up faint energy signatures, but they vanished before being locked. At first, the officers dismissed it as interference from cosmic radiation. But a few of them whispered among themselves, what if something was still here? Days turned into weeks. The Zorath fleet built temporary bases on 2 planets and began mining resources. They found ruins, massive steel structures half buried under dust, their designs alien yet strangely efficient. Inside, they found no bodies, no technology, just emptiness. It felt as if someone had taken everything and left in a hurry. The Zorath scientists reported that the materials used in those ruins were centuries ahead of what the Dominion currently had. But their leaders ignored the warning. They believed those ruins belonged to a lost civilization that no longer existed. Let the ghosts rest, one general said with a grin. Their world is ours now. Back on the command ship, the high commander of the Zorath fleet, an old veteran of 100 wars, stood in front of the star map. The Terran sector looked quiet, unguarded, and rich in resources. He smiled. An easy conquest, he said proudly to his officers. Once again, the Dominion proves its strength. But as the fleet advanced deeper, a few small ships began to vanish. It started with a scouting vessel near a gas giant. The ship disappeared from radar without a trace. No distress signal, no debris, just gone. A second ship vanished 3 days later near an asteroid field. Then a third, near a cold moon orbiting a dying star. The commanders blamed navigational errors, but whispers spread among the crew. They said the void was cursed. Some claimed to hear faint voices in the comms, distorted whispers saying, "Turn back." Others reported seeing shadows moving in the darkness of space, shapes too fast to track. The command dismissed these reports as fear and fatigue. The Dominion didn't believe in ghosts. They believed in power, yet something deep inside even the bravest officers began to feel uneasy. The space around them didn't feel empty anymore. One night cycle, as the fleet drifted near a blue-white star, a junior sensor officer noticed something strange. A massive energy fluctuation flickered for a brief second, then disappeared. He ran diagnostics again, but the readings were gone. The report reached the commander, who laughed it off. "Probably an old satellite," he said. But that officer couldn't shake the feeling that something had looked back. Over the next few weeks, the Zorath began broadcasting their conquest messages across open channels, a traditional act of dominance. They declared the Terran sector part of the Dominion and mocked the old human name. "The ghosts of Terran space will serve under Zorath command," one message said proudly. But unknown to them, their broadcasts reached ears they didn't know existed. Far beneath the shadows of the system, silent receivers activated. Old machines came online after centuries of dormancy. A low hum filled hidden bases buried deep within asteroids. Eyes that hadn't opened in generations flickered to life. The Terrans had heard the call. Humanity had not vanished. They had evolved, quietly, patiently, away from the galactic stage. After ancient wars nearly destroyed them, the Terrans had chosen to disappear. They built hidden colonies, concealed their networks, and erased their records from galactic history. They became ghosts, watching, learning, preparing. Now, for the first time in centuries, they were being invaded again. The decision wasn't made in anger, but in calm precision. Deep within a blacked-out command center somewhere in the Sol system, silent alarms glowed red. Data streamed in, fleet movements, coordinates, frequencies. A voice broke the silence. Unidentified ships detected in Terran-controlled space. No diplomatic signal received. Another voice replied, "Maintain observation. Do not engage. Let's see how far they go." The humans watched as the Zorath built bases on old colonies, destroyed historical artifacts, and mined sacred ground. They watched them steal what wasn't theirs, laughing and celebrating their so-called victory. But the Terrans didn't strike, not yet. They waited, invisible and patient. The time would come soon. Meanwhile, aboard the Zorath command ship, a growing unease spread among the crew. More small patrols went missing. Sometimes they received half-transmissions before a signal cut off, static mixed with faint human words. The last message received from one missing ship was a whisper. "They're here." Still, the commanders ignored the warning signs. Arrogance had blinded them. They believed they were unstoppable. After all, no one had ever dared challenge the Dominion in centuries. What could a forgotten species possibly do? But the signs became harder to ignore. One morning cycle, when the main fleet prepared to move toward the next system, every single star around them flickered for exactly 1 second. Every navigation system glitched. For a brief moment, the fleet's entire power grid dropped. Then everything went back to normal. Engineers scrambled to explain it, but no cause was found. Some said it was just a solar flare. Others whispered that someone had just scanned the entire fleet. The commander brushed it off and ordered the advance to continue. "We have nothing to fear," he said proudly. "If these so-called Terrans are still alive, let them come." But he didn't know that at that very moment, thousands of human eyes were watching him from hidden ships cloaked in the shadows. Their scanners tracked every Zorath movement, every conversation, every broadcast. Humanity had learned the art of patience. They never attacked first, but when they did, the universe remembered. As the alien fleet continued deeper, strange wrecks began to appear, floating in space. Old Terran ships, rusted, half-destroyed, yet still holding traces of their design brilliance. The aliens studied them with amusement. "They were primitive," one officer joked. "They stood no chance against us." But on one wreck, a faint engraving was discovered, still visible after centuries of decay. It said, "We left not in defeat, but in preparation." That message spread across the fleet like wildfire. Some dismissed it. Others grew silent. The old veterans among them began to wonder if they had made a mistake. Maybe the silence of Terran space wasn't a sign of weakness. Maybe it was something else, something deliberate. The commander refused to listen. "Superstitions," he said. "This sector is ours. There are no Terrans left." But deep within the asteroid belts, behind cloaked satellites and dormant outposts, the humans had already started to awaken. Their networks came alive. Old defense codes were reactivated. Fleets that had slept for generations began powering up. Massive ships hidden in the shadows slowly turned their engines toward the intruders. In the silence of space, a human voice whispered across encrypted channels, "They think we're gone." Another replied calmly, "Then let them believe it, until we decide otherwise." And so the aliens continued to march deeper into Terran territory, believing the sector was theirs. They had no idea that every move was being tracked, every signal recorded. Humanity had chosen to stay quiet for centuries, but now the silence was starting to break. For the Zorath, this was just another conquest. But for the Terrans, it was the beginning of their awakening. The ghosts of the past were stirring once more. The empire that had vanished was about to remind the galaxy why Terran space was never meant to be conquered. And somewhere, far away on a planet bathed in pale sunlight, a human commander watched the incoming data and whispered to herself, "They've come too far this time." Her hand hovered over a console that could awaken an entire defense network. But she waited. Humanity had one rule: never strike first. The Zorath fleet continued to move forward, unaware that every breath, every signal, and every heat signature was being watched. The Terrans had seen enough. Their patience was reaching its limit. The universe didn't know it yet, but a storm was coming, one that would change the balance of power forever. Weeks passed since the Zorath Dominion had entered Terran space. They were confident now. The first few mysterious disappearances had faded into rumor. and their commanders convinced themselves everything was under control. They had conquered dozens of star systems before. What was one more? The fleets grew larger as more ships arrived from the Dominion's core worlds. They built bases on planets rich with minerals and metals, harvesting everything they could find. Outposts began appearing across moons and asteroid fields. To anyone looking from outside, the Zorath seemed unstoppable, an empire expanding without resistance. But not everyone inside the fleet felt that way. Among the lower officers and workers, a quiet fear had started to spread. The silence of Terran space was unnatural. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from emptiness. It was the kind that made you feel something was waiting, hidden in the dark. Some said they saw small flashes far in the distance, tiny glimmers of light that disappeared the moment you tried to focus on them. Others said their sensors picked up faint heat signatures that didn't match any known life forms. A few even reported hearing whispers on open comm channels like someone softly speaking in an old forgotten language, but no one could prove anything. Every strange reading vanished before it could be recorded. The commanders dismissed these stories as nonsense. They told the soldiers they were just tired or overworked. The official report stated, "Terran space is empty. There is no intelligent life remaining." And so they kept moving forward. One evening cycle, in the command chamber of the lead battleship, the Dominion officers gathered to celebrate their progress. They had captured 6 planets and dozens of moons. There was music, laughter, and a sense of pride. The commander stood tall and declared, "This region is now part of the Zorath Dominion. The so-called Terrans are nothing but dust and memory." Everyone cheered. But outside, beyond the shining windows of the ship, the stars watched silently. And somewhere, hidden deep within that same darkness, something else was watching them back. On the mining planet they had named Zeta 4, workers began to report strange events. Machines stopped working for no reason. Mining drills froze even though power levels were full. Security drones lost signal and drifted into space, their last recorded footage showing shadows moving across the horizon. At night, some of the workers claimed to see glowing symbols in the sky, brief, bright markings that faded like smoke. The officers ignored it all, calling it hallucination caused by exhaustion. But the fear in the miners' eyes told another story. Some began requesting transfers out of the Terran sector. None were approved. Meanwhile, inside a hidden Terran base deep within an asteroid field, humans continued to observe quietly. Dozens of large screens displayed Zorath fleet movements. Every time an alien ship transmitted data, it was copied and decoded. The Terrans had been preparing for centuries for this kind of moment. They were not like the old human nations that once fought for land or pride. They had learned patience, control, and strategy. Their leader, sitting in silence before a glowing blue display, spoke softly. "They've built their nests on our soil, but they don't realize they're already surrounded." An officer beside her replied, "Should we engage?" "Not yet," she said. "They still think we're gone. Let them stay comfortable a little longer." Her words carried no anger, only calm calculation. Humanity had changed since its disappearance from the galactic scene. They no longer sought fame or domination. They sought peace. But if anyone disturbed that peace, humanity knew exactly how to end it. Back in the Dominion fleet, a science ship stumbled upon something unusual. While mapping an asteroid belt, they detected a structure hidden inside one of the larger rocks. The readings were old, very old, but still active. The scientists grew curious and sent a drone inside. What it captured left them confused. The drone found a chamber filled with machinery that still hummed faintly. There were human symbols on the walls, faded but recognizable. In the center stood a circular device made of black alloy, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The drone's light flickered and suddenly the entire system shut down. Before losing contact, it transmitted one last image, 2 glowing human eyes reflecting in the darkness. The science ship's crew panicked and immediately reported the incident. But before they could analyze the data, their communication system went offline. Their engines powered down, and one by one the lights on the ship went dark. When rescue ships arrived hours later, they found the science vessel completely intact, but drifting silently. Not a single person remained on board. No signs of struggle, no signs of escape, just empty corridors, floating tools, and a lingering echo of something unseen. The report was classified immediately. The High Commander blamed it on a systemic failure, but among the lower ranks whispers began to spread again. Some soldiers refused to sleep alone. Others carried small personal weapons even when off duty. Something in the Terran sector didn't feel right, and no one could explain it. The strange disappearances didn't stop there. Patrol ships vanished one after another, always in small numbers, never enough to trigger full alarm. The command kept saying the same thing: it's a malfunction. Nothing more. But deep down, everyone knew something was wrong. One day, while the fleet was setting up a new base around a frozen planet, the communications officer picked up a faint transmission. It wasn't from any Dominion ship. It was weak, distorted, but clearly deliberate. A voice, calm, steady human, spoke only 2 words: "Leave now." Every system went silent for a full minute. The message repeated once more, then disappeared completely. The officers scanned every frequency but found nothing. It was as if the voice had come from nowhere. The commander, growing frustrated, declared, "It's a trick. Some leftover signal from old Terran satellites." But his tone wasn't as confident as before. Even he felt a chill crawl up his spine. Far away, the hidden Terran observers smiled quietly as they watched the confusion unfold. "Phase 1 complete," one of them said. Their strategy was simple: fear before fire. They wanted the invaders to realize they were never alone. The Terrans could have destroyed them easily from the start, but they chose to wait. To make them understand that stepping into Terran space meant stepping into something far more dangerous than war. It meant awakening a power that had learned to hide perfectly. Back in the Dominion's War Council, tension grew. The scientists wanted to retreat and study the strange phenomena from afar. But the military leaders refused. Their pride couldn't allow them to pull back after so much progress. "We are the Zorath Dominion," the High Commander thundered. "We do not retreat from ghosts." And so they ordered the fleet to advance toward the central region of Terran space. They didn't know that their every move was being tracked. They didn't know that behind the stars ahead, massive Terran ships were already waiting, silent, cloaked, and unseen. The deeper they went, the more their systems began to glitch. Engines slowed for no reason. Navigation software kept showing incorrect coordinates. Artificial gravity flickered on and off. It was as if the entire sector itself was fighting them. The crews grew restless. "It's like space itself doesn't want us here," one of them whispered. Meanwhile, at the hidden Terran command, the human leader finally gave a quiet order. "Activate the outer sentinels," she said. Across the sector, invisible satellites powered up. Thousands of eyes opened across the void, scanning and recording every ship in the alien fleet. The Terrans had never revealed themselves to any species in centuries. But the time for silence was ending. As the Zorath continued their so-called conquest, they started noticing small details they couldn't explain. Their data logs were being altered. Their ship's internal systems played back recordings they had never made, short, random bursts of human speech. Their lights flickered and shadows moved across corridors even when no one was there. For the first time, their soldiers began to lose confidence. They didn't fear battle, they feared the unknown. And Terran space was nothing if not full of the unknown. One night, aboard a Zorath destroyer patrolling the edge of the system, the crew picked up faint movement on the radar. A single massive shape appeared for less than 3 seconds, then vanished completely. The readings showed it was almost 5 kilometers long, larger than any known Dominion ship. The commander of that destroyer immediately sent a signal to Fleet Command. But before the message could finish sending, the destroyer's power went out. Every light turned off, every engine stopped, and for a moment space went completely still. When power finally returned, the mysterious object was gone. The destroyer's hull, however, bore a single burned mark, 3 lines forming a symbol that none of the aliens recognized. But somewhere deep in human history, that same mark meant one thing: Terran Defense Fleet. The Dominion fleet had no idea what they had just awakened. They thought they had conquered quiet space, but in truth they had walked straight into a trap, one carefully laid over centuries. And as the fleet continued forward, their leaders proudly declared victory once more, unaware that above them, hidden in the blackness, hundreds of Terran warships were already beginning to uncloak. The silence of Terran space was not peace. It was warning, and the warning had been ignored for far too long. The Zorath Dominion's invasion had gone too smoothly for too long. They had occupied planet after planet in Terran space, without facing any organized resistance. To their commanders, it was proof of Terran extinction. But deep down, many of their soldiers were no longer convinced. They couldn't explain the things they had seen, the lights that moved against physics, the strange whispers in the communication channels, or the ships that appeared on scanners only for a heartbeat before vanishing again. It was like the stars themselves were alive watching them. One night cycle inside a Zorath command center orbiting a captured moon, an officer rushed into the main hall with a pale expression. "A dreadnought has gone missing," he reported. The room went silent. The commander frowned. "Lost how?" "Vanished," the officer replied. "We received its signal an hour ago while it was crossing the asteroid belt." "Then nothing. No explosion, no debris. It's just gone." The commander didn't believe it at first. Dreadnoughts were among the largest ships in the Dominion fleet, armed with heavy weapons and reinforced armor. Losing one was almost impossible. But the report was real. They sent search teams, but no trace was ever found. Only fragments of melted metal drifted through the asteroid field, as if something had sliced the dreadnought apart in seconds. The science division analyzed the fragments and found energy signatures they couldn't identify. Clean, sharp, and far beyond anything the Zorath had ever seen. The readings looked artificial, but unlike any known weapon design. When the report reached the War Council, one of the admirals looked uneasy. "Could it be Terrans?" The commander laughed. "Terrans? You mean those ancient humans? Impossible. Their technology was centuries behind ours." But the admiral didn't smile, then explain what could destroy a dreadnought without leaving a trace. The room fell silent. No one had an answer. That night, a rumor spread among the fleet, of a ghost fleet hiding in the darkness. Some soldiers whispered that the Terrans were still alive, waiting for the perfect time to strike. Others said they were fighting shadows or an invisible defense system left behind centuries ago. The commanders tried to crush these stories, but they only grew stronger. Fear moved faster than light. Meanwhile, far away from the Zorath fleet, inside a secret Terran command station hidden inside a dead planet, humans were indeed watching. The station was ancient but powerful, built deep under the crust and shielded from any detection. The people working there spoke softly, moving between glowing screens showing Zorath ship movements in real time. A quiet voice filled the room. "They've reached the inner perimeter," another replied, "and they've lost a dreadnought." A pause. Then came calm words that carried both warning and certainty. "They'll lose more before they realize what they've stepped into." The Terrans had prepared for this moment long ago. After vanishing from the galaxy, they didn't disappear. They evolved. They learned how to hide entire worlds, cloak entire fleets, and erase their presence from every known map. For centuries, they built silently, watching the universe grow arrogant without them. The Zorath were just the latest to mistake silence for weakness. Days passed, and more strange incidents followed. A supply convoy went missing between systems. A research ship found its communication log scrambled by an unknown code. When decoded, the only message that appeared was, "You are being observed." Then came the most terrifying discovery yet. One of the Zorath patrols captured a faint transmission in a human language. They played it for the commanders. It was a calm, steady voice saying, "Leave Terran space." No one could trace the source. It wasn't coming from any known signal band. The sound quality was too perfect, too clean, as if it was being transmitted directly into their systems. The commander, frustrated and angry, ordered all communication channels locked down. "No more ghost stories," he barked. "We are the Dominion. There are no Terrans left alive." But even as he said it deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. In the following days, something strange began happening to the Zorath systems. Their sensors started showing phantom readings, massive energy signatures moving around them but vanishing before any lock could be made. Navigation systems reset themselves mid-flight. Whole databases of star charts went blank. One officer described it perfectly. "It's like someone is inside our ships, rewriting our maps while we're flying." They weren't wrong. The Terrans had infiltrated their network long ago. Every message, every log, every coordinate sent by the Zorath fleet was being monitored and altered. The humans didn't just want to fight. They wanted to control the enemy's perception of reality. In the hidden Terran base, a small group of operators worked quietly. On their screens, Zorath ships appeared as glowing dots. Every movement, every pattern was being studied. "Do we show them the signal?" one asked. Not yet, replied the human commander. Let them doubt themselves first. Fear will do our work for us. Back in the Zorath fleet, the tension was unbearable. Sleep cycles were restless. Crews reported hearing knocking sounds echoing inside their hulls. Cameras recorded brief shadows moving in empty corridors. Engineers swore that tools shifted positions when no one was there. It was psychological warfare at its finest, and the Terrans were masters of it. The breaking point came when another dreadnought disappeared, this time while under full escort. There was no battle. One moment it was there, the next, it wasn't. The escort ships picked up a blinding flash of light and a faint voice across the comms before silence fell again. When the fleet's analysts examined the final transmission, they heard it clearly. Do not test our patience. That was the moment everything changed. The Dominion finally realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. A secret emergency meeting was held aboard the flagship. The room was filled with tension and fear. The commander paced back and forth while the others watched the holographic projection of their shrinking fleet. One of the younger officers spoke up quietly. Sir, what if the Terrans never left? What if this entire sector is one giant trap? The commander turned sharply. Watch your tongue. But sir, the officer continued, we keep calling them extinct, but their technology, these attacks, they're far more advanced than ours. Maybe they wanted us to come here. The commander slammed his fist on the table. Enough. The Dominion doesn't fall to myths. Prepare for a full-scale sweep. If there are Terrans left, we will find them and crush them. And so the order was given. Thousands of ships began moving toward the Sol system, the ancient heart of humanity. They didn't know it yet, but they were flying straight into the lion's den. Back on Earth's hidden surface, human defense systems came online for the first time in centuries. Underground cities lit up. Massive hangars opened, revealing ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, silent, and armed with energy cores capable of bending light itself. Human engineers stood by their stations, watching as old machines roared to life. Their leader looked at the glowing Earth map before her and spoke softly. They're coming. Someone nearby asked, Do we reveal ourselves? She hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. Not yet. Let them reach the gate. Once they see what waits there, they'll understand who they've provoked. Meanwhile, the Zorath continued their advance, but their confidence had vanished. No one joked anymore. Every ship flew in formation, scanning every corner of space. But no matter how hard they looked, they saw nothing. Until one night, a scouting vessel sent ahead of the fleet suddenly picked up something enormous on their sensors. An object the size of a small moon, hovering just beyond their scanning range. It didn't emit any light, no radiation, no sound. It was invisible, yet its shadow blocked out the stars behind it. As they tried to approach, their engines froze. The ship's systems flickered, and for a few seconds everything went black. When power returned, the object was gone. But something new appeared on their radar. A single, short message written in an ancient human code. We see you. The message spread like wildfire across the Dominion fleet. Panic followed. Some ships even turned back, disobeying orders. The commanders threatened them, but fear had already won. The once proud Zorath soldiers now looked into the darkness and saw death waiting. The Terrans still hadn't fired a single shot, yet they were winning. In the hidden command room on Earth, the human leader finally gave her next order. Signal Phase 2. Let them know we're here. Across space, dormant satellites activated. The Zorath sensors, already on edge, suddenly detected hundreds, no thousands, of energy sources appearing all around them. The signals came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Dominion fleet froze. Every ship, every commander, every soldier stared at the readings in disbelief. Then came a final voice, calm, deep, and unmistakably human, echoing across every Zorath communication line. You have entered Terran space. Leave now or be removed. The message lasted only 5 seconds, but it shook the entire fleet. Some thought it was a trick, some thought it was a threat. But to those who heard the voice, there was something in its tone that chilled them. It wasn't anger. It was warning. The commander of the Zorath fleet clenched his jaw and gave his final order. Prepare all weapons. If they want to show themselves, we'll make them regret it. But the Terrans were already waiting. The silence that had hung over the galaxy for centuries was about to end, and the universe would finally remember the name it had forgotten. For a long time, The alien fleet moved closer to the solar system, their glowing ships slicing through the darkness like sharp blades. The Zorath Dominion believed this mission would be no different from the many worlds they had already conquered. They were proud, powerful, and sure of themselves. In their minds, Terran space was just another easy victory. Their commanders laughed at the old stories that described humans as strong and unpredictable. To them, Terrans were extinct or hiding in fear. But they had no idea how wrong they were. At first, everything looked quiet. The planets in the solar system seemed calm, lifeless, and empty. There were no visible defense stations, no moving fleets, no signs of activity. It felt too easy. So the Zorath ships began to spread across the edge of the system, scanning for resources and setting up their control points. They sent coded messages to their leaders, declaring that Terran space was now under Dominion control. The fleet commander felt proud, until something strange happened. The moment their largest warship crossed the asteroid belt, the sensors began to fail. Screens flickered, navigation systems froze, and energy readings spiked to impossible levels. The officers looked at one another, unsure what was going on. Then through the static noise, a deep voice echoed through every communication channel. "Leave Terran space." It was calm, steady, and human. The Zorath crew froze. Some thought it was a trap. Others believed it was a recording from the past. But before anyone could react, the signal vanished, leaving only silence behind. Their commander ordered the sensors to reset and dismissed the voice as interference. But that night, the crew didn't sleep easily. Days passed, and the invasion continued. The Zorath scanned planets, searching for any trace of civilization. Earth, the ancient home of humans, appeared empty. The cities were abandoned, the satellites broken, and the atmosphere calm. To the invaders, it looked like a graveyard of an old species that had destroyed itself. But deep beneath that silence, something was waiting. As the Zorath ships moved closer to Mars, they began to pick up faint heat signatures on the planet's surface. A group of soldiers landed to investigate, thinking it might be leftover human machines or mining stations. They found old tunnels carved into the red rock, filled with dust and silence. But inside, something still worked. A tiny blue light blinked in the corner of one tunnel. When one of the soldiers touched it, a screen came to life showing the symbol of the Terran Federation. It was the first clear proof that humans had not disappeared. They had gone underground. When this discovery reached the main command ship, panic began to rise quietly. Reports came in of strange energy readings across multiple planets, signals appearing and disappearing as if someone was watching them. The Zorath Dominion's confidence began to crack. Their admiral ordered a full planetary scan of the entire solar system. They wanted to make sure no human resistance remained, but what they didn't know was that every scan, every signal, every transmission they sent was being watched from hidden places. Humanity had been observing them from the moment they entered the system. In the shadows of moons, inside cloaked space stations, and behind the orbit of Neptune, Terran ships waited in complete silence. The humans had learned from history. They knew how to hide, how to adapt, and how to survive quietly. The fall of Earth centuries ago had taught them a painful lesson. Never reveal your full strength until it's absolutely necessary. They had built new technology, new weapons, and new defenses that the galaxy had never seen before. And now, the time had come to show it. The first real sign of the Terrans' return happened suddenly. A Zorath patrol ship reported a massive gravitational anomaly near Saturn's rings. They thought it was a natural storm. But as they approached, the rings began to move unnaturally, like a ripple in water. Out of the distortion, something huge began to appear. At first, it looked like a shadow. Then it solidified. A massive station, larger than any Zorath city ship, covered in armor that reflected no light. It was completely silent, yet it emitted a presence that made even the alien crew feel small. The Zorath captain tried to contact it, but no reply came. Then suddenly, the Terran station powered up. Thousands of small lights flickered on its surface like stars awakening in the dark. A deep hum filled space, followed by a transmission sent across every communication channel in the system. "You have entered Terran space uninvited. You will not leave it." The words sent chills through every ship. The Zorath fleet tried to respond, but their systems began to glitch again. Weapons refused to charge, engines failed, and their own signals were jammed. Within seconds, a wave of invisible energy pulsed through space. Several Zorath ships lost power entirely, drifting helplessly. Then it began. From the dark side of the moon, From behind Jupiter's storms, from the shadows of asteroids, Terran ships uncloaked one by one. They were sleek, black, and built with precision. Each ship carried weapons unlike anything the Zorath had seen. Magnetic cannons, gravity warheads, and rail systems that could slice through shields like paper. The sight was overwhelming. Humanity had not only survived, they had evolved beyond anything the aliens could imagine. The Terrans didn't open fire immediately. They waited, almost as if giving the invaders one last chance to leave. But the Zorath Dominion had never backed down from a fight. Their pride refused to let them retreat. The admiral of the Dominion gave the order. Destroy them. Every alien ship in the fleet launched its full power. Plasma cannons roared, missiles flew, and the sky above the planets lit up like a storm of fire. For a moment it looked like the Terrans would be crushed, but when the smoke cleared, the human ships were gone. They had vanished from radar. Before the Zorath could regroup, dozens of flashes appeared all around them. Terran ships had moved faster than light sensors could track. They struck with terrifying accuracy, disabling engines and weapons with clean, controlled shots. No chaos, no waste. Every attack had purpose. The Zorath tried to fight back, but it was like trying to fight shadows. One alien officer screamed as his console showed their fleet collapsing. "They're everywhere," he shouted. And he was right. Humanity had surrounded them completely. In space, the battle looked beautiful yet horrifying. Streams of light, silent explosions, and massive ships burning quietly in the dark. But inside the Terran flagship, there was no celebration. The humans were calm, focused, and cold. They didn't fight for revenge or glory. They fought to protect what was theirs. Within minutes, half the Zorath fleet was gone. The rest began to retreat. But every hyperspace exit they tried was blocked. The Terrans had set up gravity traps that locked the entire system down. No one could leave. By the end of the day, the solar system was filled with the wreckage of alien ships. The few that survived drifted helplessly, sending desperate distress calls that no one answered. The Terran fleet didn't destroy them all. They allowed a handful to escape. It wasn't mercy. It was a warning. As the last surviving Zorath ship fled, its scanners picked up one final transmission from Earth itself. A human voice, steady and calm, said, "We do not seek war. But never mistake silence for weakness." Then everything went quiet again. The Terran ships faded back into invisibility, vanishing into the void as if they had never been there. And once again, Terran space looked empty, silent, calm, and peaceful. But this time, the Zorath Dominion knew better. They had seen what hid behind that silence, and the galaxy would never forget the day humanity unveiled itself. The silence after the warning didn't last long. Within moments, the entire space around the Sol system erupted in chaos. The Zorath Dominion's fleets, once so confident and proud, suddenly found themselves trapped in a storm they could not understand. The Terrans had unveiled their power, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed before. The alien commanders ordered a full attack, but panic had already started to spread. Their systems kept failing. Their weapons refused to fire properly, and their sensors were filled with static. They tried to target the Terran ships, but those vessels seemed to flicker in and out of existence as if they were ghosts. Every time the aliens locked onto one, it vanished, only to reappear behind them a few seconds later. Then came the first strike. A single Terran cruiser moved out of formation and fired what looked like a streak of blue light. The energy beam sliced straight through a Zorath destroyer, cutting it cleanly in half. There was no explosion, no fire, just silence as the alien ship broke apart. Before the rest of the fleet could react, 5 more Terran ships joined in, releasing bursts of energy that shattered shields and crippled engines. It was precise and controlled, like a hunter removing threats one by one. Inside the Zorath command ship, chaos grew. Officers shouted reports, systems screamed warnings, and the admiral's voice echoed through the bridge as he demanded answers. "Where are they? Why can't we hit them?" But no one had an answer. The Terrans weren't fighting with normal weapons. They were using something far beyond the Dominion's understanding, a fusion of human instinct and advanced technology. Every few seconds, a Zorath ship went dark. Their crews didn't even have time to scream. It was as if the Terrans knew exactly where to strike to disable life support, engines and weapons without wasting effort. It wasn't war. It was surgical, controlled, ruthless. On the Terran flagship Aegis Prime, the human commander stood silently, watching the battle unfold through a large window overlooking Earth's orbit. Around her, the crew worked calmly. There was no shouting, no rush. They knew exactly what to do. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, waiting for the day someone would test them. Sector 4, eliminate the lead battleship, she said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost emotionless. The crew followed her command instantly. A group of smaller Terran ships broke formation and launched gravity warheads, silent, glowing spheres that distorted space around them. When they reached the enemy formation, the Zorath ships twisted violently, their own gravity pulling them apart. In seconds, an entire line of ships was gone, but still the Dominion refused to surrender. They were too proud, too stubborn to admit defeat. The remaining fleets regrouped, forming a massive defensive circle around their flagship. Their admiral ordered every ship to charge their main cannons and fire all at once. "If we can't see them, we'll destroy everything in front of us," he shouted. The dark side of space lit up as thousands of plasma beams shot forward, turning the sky into a storm of light. For a brief moment it looked like they might overwhelm the Terrans, but then the human ships reappeared, not in front of them but above and below, completely surrounding them. The alien crews froze as Terran warships began to rotate in perfect formation. Their weapons glowed faintly, building energy, and then silence. In that stillness, the entire battlefield seemed to stop breathing. A second later, the Terran ships opened fire. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It wasn't just bright, it was silent, clean, and absolute. The Dominion fleet vanished in waves of light, each ship disappearing before the shockwaves even reached them. The Terrans had used directed energy so powerful that it left no debris behind. When the light faded, only a few scattered ships remained. Their hulls were cracked, their engines offline, their crews terrified. The Terran fleet didn't chase them. They simply floated in the void, calm and unshaken. Like predators watching their prey realize the truth. The alien admiral tried to send a retreat order, but even that failed. Every hyperspace gate and jump path out of the Sol system was sealed. The Terrans had locked them in using gravity traps, invisible energy fields that bent space itself. No one could escape. Desperation filled the Dominion's communication lines. Some begged for mercy, others tried to surrender, but there was no response. The Terrans didn't answer. They only observed. Inside the Aegis Prime, the human commander finally gave an order. "Disable the survivors. Do not destroy them." Her crew hesitated for a moment, not out of confusion but out of surprise. It would have been easier to end the battle completely, to erase the Dominion's fleet from existence. But that wasn't what humanity wanted. This wasn't about revenge or conquest. It was about sending a message. The Terrans began targeting the remaining ships with precision strikes, knocking out power cores and communication systems. One by one, the Zorath vessels went dark, left drifting helplessly through the cold of space. When the battle ended, the Sol system was silent again. Only the stars and the wreckage of hundreds of alien ships remained. The Terran fleet held position, watching for any sign of movement. There was none. Slowly, the commander turned to her crew. "Broadcast the message," she said. A few seconds later, a signal went out across every surviving Dominion ship, a simple voice transmission that every alien officer could hear. It was human, calm, and emotionless. "We are the Terrans. We do not seek war, but you entered our home uninvited. You will return to your worlds and remember this moment. Never mistake our silence for weakness." The message repeated once, then stopped. And then, one by one, the Terran ships began to vanish again, cloaking themselves in light until there was nothing left but emptiness. For the Zorath, it was the most terrifying silence they had ever known. Their fleets were gone, their pride shattered. They had come to conquer, but instead, they had been shown the power of a species that refused to die. As the surviving ships limped away from the solar system, their sensors recorded one final image: Earth, glowing softly in the distance, surrounded by invisible shields and silent guardians that could not be seen. The alien admiral stared at that planet, realizing the truth. The Terrans hadn't just survived, they had become something far greater. Something the galaxy would never dare to provoke again. In the following days, across Dominion space, news of the defeat spread like wildfire. Entire worlds whispered the same words: Terran space is forbidden. Even the most powerful empires began to avoid that sector. No one dared to challenge them again, and far away, hidden deep in the shadows of the moon, the humans watched quietly. They didn't celebrate. They didn't boast. They simply returned to their silent vigilance, knowing one thing: peace only lasts as long as strength remains unseen. The battle had ended, but the legend had just begun. From that day forward, every commander, every fleet, and every empire in the galaxy remembered the warning written in the stars. The battle that had shaken the skies of the Sol system was finally over. The last flashes of war had faded, leaving behind silence and drifting wreckage. For a long moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. What was once a field of pride for the Zorath Dominion had now turned into their graveyard. Hundreds of their ships floated lifeless, their lights gone, their engines dead. And in the middle of it all, the Terran fleet stood quietly, not celebrating, not boasting, just watching. On the flagship, the human commander remained still as the crew monitored the last signals. "Enemy activity?" she asked calmly. "None," a technician replied. "Their systems are dead. They're not even trying to fight anymore." The commander nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Good," she said softly. "Then it's time." A signal was sent out across every surviving Zorath ship. It carried no threat, no anger, just a single message, the same one that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. "We do not seek war, but never mistake silence for weakness." The message repeated once, then vanished. Moments later, the Terran ships began to disappear again. One by one, they activated their cloaking systems until only empty space remained. To the alien survivors, it was like ghosts fading back into the shadows. Within minutes, the mighty Terran fleet was gone, leaving nothing but silence behind. The few Zorath ships that still worked turned away and began the long, painful retreat. Their commanders didn't speak. Their crews didn't cheer. The arrogance that had filled them before the invasion had vanished completely. They now carried something else: fear. As they drifted away from the Sol system, they looked back one last time. There, floating in the distance, was Earth, calm, blue, and shining softly beneath the sunlight. To the Zorath, it looked peaceful, almost fragile. But now they knew better. That peaceful world was protected by a force they couldn't understand, one that didn't need to shout or show itself to be feared. When the surviving ships finally reached Dominion space, they were met with silence. The higher command expected victory, but what they saw were damaged ships, broken soldiers, and haunted faces. The great admiral of the invasion stood before his council and said only one thing: "The Terrans are not what we thought they were." His words spread faster than any official report. Across the stars, other alien civilizations began to whisper. Some didn't believe the story. They said no human fleet could defeat the Dominion's armada. But others had seen the signs. Old records, ancient signals, and long-forgotten encounters all pointed to one truth: humanity had never disappeared. They had only hidden their power until the time was right. On distant worlds, traders and explorers started avoiding the route near Terran space. Ships that once passed close to the Sol system changed their paths, afraid of what might be watching them from the darkness. Even the bravest captains refused to enter that part of the galaxy, saying, "The Terrans guard their home. Go there, and you won't come back." Meanwhile, back in the Sol system, the humans returned to their routines. The battle had ended, but life went on. The Earth's surface glowed again with lights as hidden cities reopened. In the orbit above, giant stations repaired their systems quietly. There was no parade, no celebration. The Terrans didn't need it. They had defended their home. That was enough. Deep under the surface of the moon, inside one of the Terran command bases, the commander of the Aegis Prime met with the council. The room was filled with calm faces, people who had seen both the fall and rise of their kind. The commander spoke first. "They will not return soon," she said. "But we must stay alert. The galaxy now knows who we are." One of the council members nodded. "And that's both a shield and a danger," he said. "They fear us now, but fear fades with time. When it does, they'll come again. Maybe not the Zorath, but someone else." The commander looked out through the transparent wall, where the curve of Earth glowed against the blackness of space. "Then we'll be ready," she said quietly. "We always are." The humans had learned the hard way that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about patience, intelligence, and unity. For generations, they had prepared for this moment, not to conquer others, but to ensure no one would ever take their world again. And now, After centuries of hiding, they had shown the universe what they truly were capable of. But even as the Terrans repaired their fleets and restored their defenses, something deeper stirred within their people. A quiet pride, not arrogance but awareness. They had faced one of the galaxy's strongest empires and survived without losing their humanity. They didn't fight for conquest or revenge. They fought because they had no choice and because their silence had been mistaken for fear. Days turned into weeks and the wreckage of the battle slowly disappeared. Salvage drones collected debris from orbit, recycling materials into new ships and stations. The stars around the Sol system returned to their calm rhythm. From the outside, it looked like nothing had happened, as if space itself had erased the memory of the war. But for those who witnessed it, the memory would never fade. Across distant galaxies, stories began to spread. Travelers told tales of the ghosts of Terra, mysterious beings who appeared out of nowhere, destroyed invaders, and vanished back into darkness. Some said they were machines. Others claimed they were the last descendants of an ancient, almost mythical race. But none of them truly understood. The Terrans didn't need the galaxy's recognition. They were content to remain unseen until the day they needed to rise again. Inside the hidden archives on Earth, historians began documenting the battle, recording every detail for future generations. They wanted their children to remember, not to live in fear, but to understand that peace always has a price. They knew there would come a time when someone else might forget that lesson. And when that day came, humanity would be ready to remind them. One quiet evening, as the commander stood on the observation deck of her ship, she looked at the stars. Out there, countless civilizations continued to grow, trade, and fight among themselves. None of them truly understood how close they had come to discovering the strength that humanity had kept hidden. A faint smile crossed her face as she whispered to herself, "Let them think we're gone. It's better that way." The stars twinkled silently as if agreeing, and so the galaxy moved on, a little quieter, a little more careful. The Zorath Dominion rebuilt their fleets, but they never returned to Terran space. Their leaders forbade it, calling that region the Forbidden Zone. It became a place of warning, a reminder of what happens when arrogance meets patience. Over time, the legend of the Terrans grew. It was told in distant markets, in spaceport bars, and even in classrooms of faraway worlds. The story changed with every retelling, but one message always remained the same. Never disturb the silence of Terran space. Back on Earth, humanity continued to evolve. Their technology advanced even further, but their greatest strength remained the same. Their unity, their resilience, and their ability to stay calm even when faced with destruction. They knew the galaxy would never fully understand them, and that was fine. Their true power was not in being feared, but in being underestimated. Years later, a new generation of Terran explorers prepared to travel beyond their home system again, not to conquer, but to learn. They would go quietly, as they always did, exploring the stars with caution and wisdom. And though they would meet new civilizations, make allies, and maybe even enemies, one truth would always stay with them. Humanity was no longer the fragile race it once was. They had faced the storm and survived it. And somewhere in the dark corners of the galaxy, where rumors and fear still lingered, people would whisper the same words over and over again, and a warning, a truth and a reminder of what they had seen.